Hey guys, this is Titan and the 25th.2 or the second part of the 25th episode of my Cities Skylines project Vedastein, and yes, here we have 2 episodes in a row. I am just as surprised as you by that fact, and I can say I've never felt so professional like in that moment. But yeah, whatever. So here we have the second part of that episode that I split in 2 episodes, and that sort of started last week. Now we are starting this episode in the middle of the last episode, and the episode today focuses on the Upper Old Town itself. While last episode we made the terraces on the streets going up the hill and this very picturesque terrace structure situation, whatever. Today we are concentrating on the big square here in the Upper Old Town and some backyards, and again the transition from the Upper Old Town into the huge cliff next to it. So we are really in the Upper Baroque Old Town now, and I'm really glad to say so. Really glad that all the asset creation and all the preparation I did finally pays up. Now, as you see, we're just starting the episode by plopping buildings, and there is not too much to say about that. As I said in the last episode, one by one you will have all these Baroque assets in your game or in the workshop, and if you want so, you can download them into your game. I think you've already noticed that this episode is a bit, let's say, shorter than my usual episodes. Again, that's a result of me splitting the 25th episode into 2 parts, because you see, with the last episode being about half an hour and this one being about 25 minutes, or well, round about 25 minutes, you see that if I hadn't split that episode up, it would be quite a big episode. And so, yeah, that's I think now you understand why I had to split it up, because it's quite a bit of content we have in those 2 episodes now. So, as we now basically finished plopping buildings for this episode, there will be still a bit more, but the base development of the area is done. I'm concentrating on this main square of the Upper Old Town here. This huge market square, this probably biggest square in the city. And I didn't want it just to be that single big square, because I thought it looks a bit boring to have just this huge square and nothing else here in the middle. And so I thought, and that actually really makes sense, that the square was created in Baroque times as this huge market square, but then at some point in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, there was a movement going on that wanted, somewhere in this period the square got refurnished, I don't know, with this statue and this platform here in the middle. And I think in the end that turned out pretty interesting and gives this whole square a bit more of an interesting look than just being a big square. And this platform, this foundation, this podest, whatever, with the statue, sort of cuts the square or this place in 2 halves or in 2 parts, and by that I had the possibility to use the upper half as a square as it's supposed to be, and use the lower half as parking spaces. That's actually very common on those places, especially if they have something that sort of splits them. Then it's quite usual to use 1 half of the square as a parking space. So I also wanted to use it here. And while we're at it, okay, now it's already gone. The statue I've used there is a statue from Peter Barr. He usually concentrates on Cuban or Havana style colonial buildings, but he made that statue and it really fits this European setting very well, so I thought, why not putting it here too? And it turned out pretty nice, so I'm feeling satisfied with it. So I just placed a few more houses on the upper side of the square, just to make it look better. It just felt better with these houses that I just plopped. And here we now am making the parking spaces I already mentioned. I also plopped these few trees on the side of the square because, again, it feels more, it feels more cozy, and it feels less empty with a few trees on the square. So I'm always happy to use trees on the square, just as I did on the theater square. If you remember back in the days when I did that one, I also plopped trees alongside the square because it sort of creates a nice backdrop for the square, and I'm always happy to use trees on squares. So, and here I'm just plopping the parking spaces, and I tried quite a bit to make the whole parking situation here have an asphalted, I don't know, ground, but in the end that didn't really work because these asphalt decals are not decals, and the parking spaces are also decals, and so there was a bit of glitching, and so I just made it like that, like it's now. And it's not, to be honest, it's not the best situation, but I can live with it. And given the fact that I am the strongest critique saying person to myself, whatever, if I can live with that, I'm sure you also like the outcome of that. If not, of course, as always, feel free to write it in the comments. And then here we're just using some stain decals, as I always do it, just to make it look more more interesting, more used, and so that the surface actually looks used, and like the pavement is some years old and not freshly paved. And what I'm doing now is really, is it exciting? I don't know. It's really interesting, at least. Mr. Miyagi, you probably know him. He's the creator of so many amazing maps on the workshop, and he created all these little outside seating areas for restaurants. Now I've actually been planning to do something like that for I don't know, ages probably, but I really didn't have the time, and so I was really lucky when Mr. Miyagi now decided to make that, and now I'm really happy to use them here, because it makes it very easy to I don't know, is it a proper word to furnish such open places, open squares? Is that a possible saying? I hope so. And the fact that that these tables and outside seating areas are actually used due to them being buildings and not just props, that's really nice, and gives a better feeling that the citizens of the city are actually walking here and sitting down, and makes it seem more lively, I guess you could say. And so I'm continuing here by still plopping some tables, because by now we really have a good variation on the workshop, with many different tables and umbrellas and planters and so much restaurant stuff we can now use for sidewalk restaurants. And it's really nice that we finally have all that all those possibilities. And here I thought I'd like to use these few, I don't know, are those flags or I'm not sure what's the proper term for it. You see what I'm using here. And I just, to be honest, I'm not sure why I wanted to do that. But the outcome looked interesting. Not great, but interesting. And at least it was an interesting choice, let's say it like that. Now here for this yellow building that I already placed in the last episode, I decided to make this building into a very, I don't know, prestigious, into a well-known and expensive hotel. And so I used these actually hanging carpets from Beard Monkey and made a red carpet in front of the entrance out of it. And yeah, it really makes it look like a more fancy hotel. And as I just said, this is supposed to be a bit of a fancy hotel. I really wanted to give this hotel an interesting garden area. And if you remember, in the last episode we already had some sort of fancy hotel with the terrace and the pool area, and this is a similar example. This used to be a Baroque garden, but it got overgrown, and when this hotel was established in this Baroque structure here, in this Baroque building, the garden was turned into the hotel garden. And the first thing I'm doing here is an outside restaurant for the hotel, but I had the interesting idea of using Jazz's market props here to use a sort of a buffet, is that the right term? A buffet, buffet, whatever, for the restaurant. So it's sort of the breakfast area here for the restaurant, and well, the guests of the restaurant can have their breakfast here in the garden and have some cheese and what is there, vegetables, bread, fish, whatever. And yeah, I at least can really imagine staying at that hotel in the middle of the Baroque Old Town and having my breakfast on that terrace there. And just to make the garden area or make the hotel itself more fancy, I'm now making a real garden, pool area in the garden. And my idea was of not only having a pool area, but also giving this pool area a bit of a garden to relax in. And I had the idea of making it so that you have some exotic plants in the garden, have some sun chairs, and have 1 or 2 saunas, because it's a fancy hotel and those quite often have a sauna. And so that's something I wanted to do here. So I started with the pool and plopped, of course, some deck chairs around the pool. But here I'm plopping the first of these small sheds, and there soon will be a second one of these. Those sheds are actually from, is it from Wick 4000? I'm not totally sure, and they are actually garden sheds for, I don't know, garden tools and all that. But for here, I thought, let's make a sauna out of it. And so we're having this garden now with some stones for the path, and with flowers and exotic plants and a fountain and deck chairs and whatever. And yes, it's well, I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to decorating gardens, so I'd really like to know from you if how you like the outcome of this garden. Please, I'd really like to know how you feel about this garden, because I, as of now, really like how it turned out, but I know it could be better and there is room for improvement in this garden. So definitely hit me up on that in the comments. I'm really interested to know how you feel about that. And as that's done now, we basically can continue with backyard detailing. The usual stuff here. You already know it, you are used to it, and I think I'll never stop with backyard detailing, even though it's always the same. But as I said in the last episode, once you start it, there's no turning back, and you have to do it in every backyard. But it actually also really gives some nice detail and some very interesting touch to every city. And now into the last 1.5 minutes of this episode. And here we have the transition from the upper old town into the big cliff behind the old town. And I really wasn't sure how to work with this big cliff. What I'm using here, or the technique I'm using here, is something I took from the Austrian city of Salzburg, where there is also a huge, and there is really a huge cliff right next to the old town. And in Salzburg, the houses are built directly onto the cliff and sort of, well, even go into the cliff. So that's what I did here, and by making these houses into POs, I can push them really into the cliff so that the house transitions smoothly into the cliff, which is a very interesting thing. And to be honest, I'd like to know how that works in these houses with the cliff. Are those cliffs used as rooms or as basement maybe? I'm not sure, but that's how it's done in Salzburg, and so I thought I can do the same here. But that's it for this episode. It has been a bit of a shorter episode, but that's how it is. Thank you for watching this episode. Stay tuned for stay with me for the cinematics in just a few seconds. If you like this episode, feel free to like it and comment it. If you don't want to miss any future videos, definitely subscribe to my channel. And if you want to support me further, you can do so on Patreon for small rewards like early access to assets and videos, just as this video has been in early access for a whole week. And yes, you can also join my Discord server if you want to get in touch with me or others who follow my work. The link is in the description. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode that I'm sure you will like, because no, I'm not gonna say something, but you will like the episode, the next one, that is. And yeah, so see you in the next episode. Until then, have a nice time, take care, and bye.